You guys have heard me talk a lot about echolocation of presence, especially in regards to my transition. Really, I'm pointing to the mechanics of presence. Everyone tries to be present, everyone wants to, try to find some way to feel more of their life. I'm giving you the mechanics as seen through my life. And one thing that occurred to me tonight, and I just wanted to make a video, and I never make like a late night video, but this just came to me. When I was younger, I called it the contract with the cosmos. In other words, it was just my like teenager language to say, I wasn't a traditionally religious person, but back then it was like when I was getting introduced to psychedelics and I had been a spiritual person. I was into a lot of like spiritual music. Sort of when I say that, I mean like Tool and the Beatles and like the deepest parts of those like, psychedelic type experiences and like, notions of reality and stuff like that. Incredible string band. But um, I uh, began to open up to this feeling that there was a way to sort of drink down more of life, right? It's almost like, so listen to what I think, echolocation of presence, right? And now I'm saying drink down more reality. So what would prevent us from drinking down reality? And I'm trying to use these, you know, sort of textured words, you could say, because I'm trying to give you an idea of something that most people barely touch. And it's something that's so simple, but could change and for example, in my life, save my life and change the way I interact with the world and myself in a way that I could only call sacred. High fidelity embodiment, high fidelity presence. So back then, I sort of felt like in the psychedelic experience, especially, and then with all the sort of background that I had, and then being a neurodivergent trans woman who, sort of always had this like splinter of sort of a dissociation of self, you could say, a simulated presence, a sort of always being a few steps behind myself rather than being right in tune with the music of reality, because that would be high fidelity presence where you close the gap between expression and being. But even then, in the psychedelic experiences, I could kind of tell that there was a way that I could touch more of reality. And in psychedelics, you like call that like different things. You could say like, oh, I saw all ultimate reality. I went to the, whatever, DMT realm or whatever it is. These are just ways that synchrony or touching more of reality interfaces with your tripped out topology. You know what I mean? And it's like, especially when you're tripped out, you're seeing things differently. And so then when that synchrony or touching more of the field of reality hits you, sometimes you describe it in these really weird ways, but in your heart, you know that the place that you touched was that place where it sort of all becomes all, or like there is no real boundaries in the fidelity of contact between the nested waves of what is reality, right? So, regardless, without going into the psychedelic part, in those experiences, I began to touch that there was a way to sort of be more present in reality, right? That like consciousness was like this cobwebs of the way that we filtered reality, and not that reality is still not filtered through your specific topology. In other words, the way your soul is textured, it still is, but there's a delay for a lot of people between reality and being, and that delay is felt like simulated presence. It's felt like when I say a stutter on the dance floor. So what would be then high fidelity embodiment? It'd be like I say in my videos, I'm trying to make it simple to understand, like you're a dancer on the dance floor, and when the music's being played, you let it all the way in, and that means that your body's moving, not in a way that you're controlling, but in a way that seems to just flow from you. Your deepest movements, your deepest creativities flow from you rather than are created or constructed or built from the outside, because that would introduce these layers of delay, almost as if you begin to assume, like, Plato suggested that we don't interface directly with reality, but you begin to assume that reality has to be controlled. And so, what do I mean by that? And I go back to the contract with the cosmos, which is this feeling that the deepest let me say it this way. The decentralized harmony mechanic that Kuramoto noticed, and this is not about ideas, I'm just using a many different way to point. And Kuramoto noticed this way that reality moves, and he called it decentralized harmony. No central actor, and the different portions of the collective field sync up together, and they all move together like metronomes or fireflies or people crossing their legs across a bridge. And so then when you finally get to that moment of synchrony with all across all your textures of across all, that's almost like you find your, it is that you find your deepest self in the actual total touching of the music. And so the contract with the cosmos was, I wasn't a traditionally religious person, but in order to touch more of reality, in order to see clearly, feel clearly, and love clearly, you have to let reality affect you. You have to let it touch all the textures of your soul. And that is like you're soaking it up or drinking it down like a sponge. And that means that you are interfacing, you are interacting with reality. Here's me describing the mechanics of presence. You are doing things in your world and dealing with people and situations and even your own self in ways that you wedge these little stutters on the dance floor before you just meet it naked and vulnerable. And so then that place where you find yourself the most, just like a dancer on the dance floor who's finding their deepest creativity in when you lose yourself, when all of my body's touching the music and it just gets to paint with me, or like paint on me, paint with me, co-create in that process of shared relation. It's almost like all of the music touches all of me. And that's where I find my deepest dance of self. And that's what I'm talking about echolocation. It's almost like my brain started to hear those moments of highest fidelity contact, not because it was an idea to be constructed or decisions to be weighed in some traditional sense. That could be part of the process of feeling the textures. But in the end, you know your next step, your next dance, because you feel it in your bones. Because like it's like a chord is struck and you hear the note. And then echolocation would be across time, not finding patterns, like conceptual patterns. Listen, I'm talking about presence, being, the way you dance with reality, not the way you think about it necessarily. That could be part of the texture of the way you dance with it all the way down. So then echolocation is when you figure out those moments where reality touches you all the way down, like where you feel that coherence, that where you feel, wow, I'm like high fidelity presence. It's not this amorphous thing that you have to find check boxes and find what works logically, but it's, oh my God, I'm right here right now. I'm really with my baby, holding my baby in my arms, and this feels like it's a holy moment. Or I'm looking across the sheets at this person that I can't believe I got so lucky to meet, which, by the way, I'm still looking for my man if you're out there. But, um, those moments that seem to go on forever, just like in the psychedelic I described, those are the moments that you can feel the thud. Love as that place of the frictionless dance between you and reality, embodied presence, between you and your lover or you and your child, whoever it is. That's that feeling of home that you have with family and with love and the right type of relationship, where it's like two dancers on a dance floor, not creating the dance to perform for each other, but to have that frictionless dance occur because you're giving your total vulnerable surrender of all your textures so they could all touch at the same time. And in that, you find symbiosis. You find that place where love connects us, love being the glue where we can all, across our differences, find that place of connection, the many knowing themselves as the one while remaining many. I'm speaking in mechanical language because there's no way to think yourself into direct contact. Direct contact is just a word to say all the textures of what you are touch the music of reality. Again, to imagine it really simply like a dancer on the dance floor. If I'm lost in my head, I might be doing like a little dance or just trying to like do like one of these or something, or do like one of those, like I'm doing one of those like popular dances or whatever. Or I'm, doing my dance just directly from the wellspring, the tap of the flow of what comes out of me when I let myself vulnerably surrender to the music. So what I'm saying is paradoxical. If you can follow me thus far, we're talking about the way people interface with reality, not the way you think conceptually about reality, although that's part of it. It's the way you let the music in. Are you receiving noise because you're trying to clip, wedge, intellectually shield, coerce, control reality? Or are you receiving it bare and letting it touch you bare? So now let's think about this organization of self, like how do we organize ourselves? How do we organize what is the self? What is our identity? Like, how do we know what is us? I'm suggesting you find yourself in the dance, you'll understand in the dance, not in a constructed character collection screen or character selection screen of who you're supposed to be, who society tells you need. Those could be part of the textures of the way you feel yourself. But ultimately, yourself is the way you dance with it all the way down. And the problem is, it's like when you create a self from the filters, people can get lost and stay in one of those layers for all their life. And then the way they relate to other people is through the filters. And then they're looking for filters because the only way they know how to touch the world through filters. The filters cause mechanical delay. In other words, instead of just letting the music hit them and then they do their dance and they're like, yeah, woo, they're just like, oh, I'm a little bit, I got to do it this way. My dad said this way. My job said this way. Is anyone looking at me? Do I fit in? Like all these like little things. And it doesn't need to be like that nervous thing. It could be, some ultra confidence, like I'm going to dominate you. I'm going to do this and that. No, I mean, I'll take a little domination, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like people who use their ego or their identity as a sort of wedge against reality or above reality rather than dancing with reality. All these are forms of like talking at reality, whether the nervous one or the hierarchy one. And they're usually imprinted through cultural models because when you get stuck in one of the filter layers, you tend to think about the world through models rather than feeling it and using the models as just a way to like, help you feel it a little bit more under those textures. It's almost like you, as a surfer on a wave, you don't need to, know the fluid dynamics of the wave to be on the surfboard. You just got to balance. You got to know how to ride the wave. And that's how you, interact with the field of reality. By riding it, how do you ride the wave? It's that echolocation, feeling what situations are for you because they can dance with your full person. Or if they're having trouble, how do you move towards a situation that would be a better organization for you and those around you, to work together in that decentralized organization where everyone's giving their full, that's literally the mechanic, that's how the fireflies turn on, that's how the metronomes sync up. How it works is that each node or unit is giving their full signal, and that allows for decentralized organization to emerge because each full signal kind of finds its other pair. Because now, like, think about it like in dating. Are you dating through filters and saying, like, I need someone with a certain amount of zeros in their bank account, or I need someone who has a certain whatever little checkbox attribute? Or are you letting them soak into your soul and seeing, can they dance with all of you? Because you see how you might like create a whole life around a relationship that was always based on filters on both sides. And that's the noise. It's almost like you're turning into a noisy radio station. So think about the difference here in organizational quality of consciousness. Are you someone that when you habitually interface with the world, when you habitually dance with what the music of reality is playing, do you do it in a way where you're constantly, it's like I say, like the stutters on the dance floor? Or are you letting it all the way in, like letting the light all the way in, letting it be permeable, right? You're letting yourself be permeable to the dance. You have to let it affect you. One of them is like putting a hand out and being like, reality's this way. I'm forcing it. I'm so scared that I can't let the next move or sense of self or sense of relation come from the deepest place of my, you could say, the deepest barometer of soul, or like the deepest place of conscience where my total being is making that decision as a dance with reality. And sometimes, intense decisions are part of that, but the only place that you actually make them from that allows you to move on as you and like you feel the thought all the way down is that place where it soaks into you fully so much that it's like a chord struck and you can't deny it. Not necessarily because you ended up with the pros and cons, even though that could be part of the process. It's more because, when you let it hit your full soul, you're like, that's it. That's the one. That's it right there. And then it's no longer a negotiation with reality in the sense of you're keeping a position and then you're like rigid, but more of that breath, which takes the characteristic of, both taking in the field completely and then the texture of how you take it in within your particular lungs, your particular topology, your particular soul. So then going back to the contract with the cosmos, it's almost like, and again, this is decentralized harmony. You can look it up. it's a form. You can look it up in mathematics, for example. You can look it up on YouTube and look at cool things with like fireflies and metronomes turning on. So it's not that it's a transactional form of identity. And then people get triggered because their whole identity is based off of control. So then they think when I say decentralized harmony or decentralized love, love as direct contact is the way where each sovereign node gets to be exactly itself, not a version of itself that's trying to be above others and then constantly feels a little numb and disconnected from everything, but its full entire self dancing in the decentralized dance of organization with all the other collective. Wouldn't that be cool? And so that's not a transaction, that's not a coercion. These are things that had to happen because we were organizing through symbols rather than organizing through tone, through topology, through the way that the decentralized dance takes place in us as human beings through our presence or fidelity of contact with it. In metronomics, where you see you could do it, you could go to a hobby store and buy it yourself. But if you're watching metronomes sync up, if you place foam between them to break up the shared vibratory surface, in other words, delay, in other words, the filters, they can't sync up together. But if you allow them to sync up on a shared vibratory surface, they will always sync up together. It's the least energetically dense way to arrange a collective field. Reality is not separate billiard ball things. It's, one field. And that's one of the flips that you feel. You don't prove conceptually, you just feel because you're riding the wave, right? So one of the things I just really wanted to highlight in this video was that contract with the cosmos, that handshake, you could say, is like saying, I will let reality soak into every bit of me. And in a way, it's not a transaction, but I'm just trying to give you the feel for this. In return, I get my deepest sense of self, just like the mechanic of the music, right? I'm letting the music soak all the way in me. I don't know what the next little booty shake I'm going to do or the next move I'm going to do is, right? But if I let that music all the way in, I get access to like the deepest creativity, the deepest choreography, the deepest eureka moments, the deepest flow, because no longer is my brain catching on all the little filters. It's not barking. It's just allowing the music to be, painted and like allow me to flow, right? It's like constant contact across every surface. Do you feel the mechanics there? And that's what I call like my tattoo, lossless presence in the rhythm of reality. Flame is like riding the cymatic bloom, like right on the wave. And that's just your consciousness touching each texture by feeling it all the way down. How many people in this world don't want to look at the skeletons in their closet or don't inspect their consciousness because they are their whole habituated self, even if they look good on the outside and have all the certificates and all the bank accounts and all the whatever, they've never actually inspected the way that their body, their soul, their breath, their heart, their desire actually moves with reality. It's always been filtered through a filtered self. And then it's almost like from that filtered self, it sounds absolutely insane. You're like, do you lose discernment? How could you be an adult in this world and just let it hit you nakedly? I have to filter myself in every group so then I can only present certain faces and then I could be socially acceptable and all these different things. And then what do? You cost your ability to feel reality all the way down. And then it creates all this noise. And that's why I'm talking about an organizational flip in the personal consciousness. It is you feeling the music all the way down, the moment from where you went to the monkey mind, this is lame, why am I dancing, to, whoa, where'd that booty move come from? Like, oh, wow, I'm really flowing with the music, right? I'm touching all of it and it's painting me. The deepest sovereignty, agency, identity, and action come from the echolocation of the signal to the lock of the topology. And then when you ride it, you call that presence, touching reality. Sovereignty is living there. Sovereignty, your just deepest freedom of yourself, not freedom to be above others, freedom to touch reality all the way down in embodied presence. Have you been present today? Have the people around you been present today? So from inside Plato's cave or inside one of the filters, you're like, it's paradoxical that if you gave your entire signal to reality and just let it hit you, that you'd still be able to speak complex sentences and like, how is Ember doing it right now? Because it's just flowing out of me like a water slide. A water slide is just a texture word to talk about how an aperture moving through the complexity of, the textures of the field, holding on in high fidelity to each texture kind of feels less like you're moving through reality with all this rumination, anxiety, wedge, filter, friction, like little ads popping up on your screen in your head, versus you're more in this lossless flow state. And if you really dig down there, you can just feel like you're on the water slide in all aspects, whether you're in a courtroom, like I was a criminal defense attorney until last year, um, or I was writing a blog post, or I'm giving this video, or I'm playing a song, or I'm doing a dance, or I'm connecting with a friend. I'm just trying to let reality touch me all the way, to have a conversation with it that lets it affect me, rather than trying to constantly filter out and create a self that by almost habituation of like the mode of being, like constantly keeps the world out. Kind of like, can you let the light all the way in? Can you open your blinds and let more of reality hit you? Love is not scary. It feels scary to a mind that's never let the light all the way in. Love is just direct contact. It's the organizing force in this cosmos. You could call it decentralized harmony, but that's just a mechanical way to point. All words point. The only way to feel the fire is to jump in, to stop admiring the glow from the filters, from the shadows of Plato's cave, and instead jump the F in the fire. And by that, I mean leave the cave by feeling where warmth is. What is warmth but direct contact? What is direct contact but the place where you echolocate using the barometer of your conscience or soul to feel the music all the way down, and you know it in your presence? Not in your white robes or your crystals or your whatever. It's, our checkbox or the numbers in your bank account, but the way you feel yourself surfing reality. Are you really here? Or are you just doing all the social success boxes, and then you really feel numb at night, or you feel disconnected, or you feel like you can't really feel what love is? Is love even real? If that's you, let me ask you, have you been present today? Do you want to enter into a contract with the cosmos? And by that, not a transaction, not a transaction. It's more like the updated version for Ember now is, do you want to dance all the way down on the dance floor? Because remember, monkey mind, this is lame, this is lame. I don't know, why should I be dancing? Ah, God, what do I have to do after dinner? And then the work tomorrow, and that guy texted me. Versus, the music starts playing and you're just like in it, you're in it, all of a sudden you pull off some wild move and who knows how you did that. so like, uh, so you get what I'm saying. It's like allowing reality to affect you and realizing that your deepest, cleanest mirror, your deepest, cleanest sovereignty comes from letting the process all the way in and letting that deepest sense of self be that dance with reality. Just give it a shot. I'm not trying to convince you of an idea. I'm trying to say there's a way to dance more fully with reality, and you'll know it in the way you love, in the way you feel all the way down, even when it hurts. I often say that I was at the counter of incarnation and I said, everyone else is like, you know, I want like 6 Cadillacs. I want to be the Sultan. I want to be the king. I want to be the president. And then I come up, I'm like a little girl, and I'm like, I want to see clearly, feel clearly, and love clearly. Do you see it? The way to do that is to not have better ideas. It's to touch more of reality in every moment. And you know that through your presence. The gate to love is shared presence, which also harkens back to decentralized harmony. So you can feel that in my life, as a neurodivergent trans woman living in a very like closed off, narcissistic, emotionally, avoidant type environment, everyone who's watched my videos heard my, things that I went through. I found my way through holding on to the thread of love. What do I mean by that? Holding on to the place where I couldn't hide, even no matter what happened to me. No matter how vulnerable I became, no how many people threatened to leave me if I told the truth. I told the truth with my whole being, no matter how vulnerable, no matter how painful, no matter how much exclusion and estrangement that I had to experience. For decades, I've been following that same thread, and it's led me to a place where I wake up and it's sacred to be me. You don't have to be trans to understand this. We all know that spot where you dance all the way down and you finally hear the music. That spot where you're, you know, 2 a.m. drunk with a friend. Not that I drink alcohol, but I can imagine many people. And you're like, I wish I could be a kid again. I wish I could just dance with reality and giggle when it made me giggle and cry when it made me cry and love when I fell in love. But instead, everything's a constant mediation, a constant filter. I don't feel anymore. I feel numb. Maybe I need a vacation. Or maybe we've been in a cave, and the way out isn't who's cooler or who's better or who's more ideas, but can you dance all the way down with reality? Can you let yourself naked to the lossless sunlight outside the cave? Because for me, that's the same thread that saved my life. And guess what? Now that I'm here, even if I lost everything, the people that meet me now are meeting the real me, not the filter. And after every hell that I ever walked through, the only thing I ever want is real love on my real person. Do you hear it? Could anything be better than being met all the way down? Okay, Mr. Man, are you out there? My name is Ember. I did a night one. This is a really cool painting that the godfather of the poetry of Las Vegas once gave to me. Kind of a cool. You can see it's like two like eyes, and there's like the basement. But yeah, it's a very cool painting. But hope the lights weren't too strong here. Anyway, my name is Ember. Thanks for tuning with me.